Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today. We'll be going over standards-based common assessment with Study Island. My name's Alexis and I'll be getting us started today. Before we get into our session content, let's make sure that you all know how to use GoToWebinar. There are two parts to the GoToWebinar interface, the viewer, which is where you see my screen, and the control panel, which is what you will use to interact with us during the session. To provide the best possible experience for a group this size, all attendees are muted. But if you have questions during the session, feel free to type those in the questions chat area as they occur to you, and we will pause the session periodically to respond to those. You can collapse the control panel to free up your entire screen for viewing by clicking on that orange arrow, and then you can click it on the same arrow to expand it again when you need. Now, let me tell you a little bit about who we are. Edmentum has grown as technology has developed over time. We were at the forefront of technology in the 1960s with Plato Courseware, and in the early 2000s with Study Island. With nearly 60 years of experience, our commitments as an organization and our approach to assessment, instruction, and data really lay the foundation for how we support our customers and your unique programs. We do this in three key ways. Through digital curriculum, through assessments, and through educational consulting. So we have something exciting today. We'll be choosing a live attendee from this webinar at random to win this book, and then we'll be drawing the name at the end of the session, so stay tuned on that. So I'd like to introduce you to our presenters today, Jocelyn Thompson and Crystal King. Jocelyn is an implementation specialist here at Edmentum. She's worked at Edmentum for a bit over a year and started in support before transitioning to her current role. Study Island is her favorite product, and she's so glad to work in a role where her main job is to serve educators. Crystal has been with Edmentum for 3 years. She has served in our customer support department where she has fostered the love for working with educators. She is now on our implementation specialist team where she works diligently to provide educators with the solution they need for a successful implementation in their classroom. Outside of Edmentum, she is a wife and mother of 2. She has her bachelor's from the University of Texas and in Human Development and Family Sciences. I believe Crystal will be getting us started today. So Crystal, I'll hand it over to you now. Are you ready to go?
Yes, thank you, Alexis. All right, guys, so thank you so much for joining us today. This is our agenda. We're going to be talking about common formative assessment, so I hope you all are in the right place. And we'll start with just a definition of common formative assessment for anybody who needs that, as well as going through some of the characteristics and why you would want to use common formative assessments. Throughout today's presentation, we're going to refer back to some of the barriers because it is the framework of which our presentation will be based on. So we'll talk about some of the barriers in common formative assessment and how you can overcome them using Study Island as a common formative assessment tool. Now, Alexis mentioned that if you have questions, feel free to chat those in, but we do have time reserved for questions at the end if you want to reserve your questions till the end. Additionally, we'll point you to some resources and how you can get support throughout the product. So with that said, we are going to start, but before we do, I want to get an idea of our audience. We promote audience participation here. So we're going to start with a poll, and I'm going to let Alexis start the poll. But the question is, what is your role on your campus? So Alexis, if you can start that for us.
All right, y'all can go ahead and click your answer, and I will just share those out in about 10 seconds. All right, and I'm going to close it down in 3, 2, 1, and I'll share those now.
Awesome. So it looks like we have a good percentage of teachers, a small percentage of school administrators and district administrators, as well as some instructional curriculum coaches and specialists, and then a few others. So we're excited to have you all with us, and we hope this is informative to you in your implementation of Study Island. I do have another poll question because I just want to see what your experience level is with Study Island. So I'm going to let Alexis go ahead and give that as well.
All right, just launched that. So go ahead and start clicking your answers in. We'll give you about 15 seconds. All right, and I'm going to close in 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right.
All right, so it looks like we have a good amount of people who have used it before, which is great, and then a wide variety of experience level within that spectrum. So that's awesome. I hope this is definitely informative and helps rock your implementation a little bit further. So let's go ahead and get a discussion question going because I want to give you that opportunity to use the chat. And I want to ask this question: what is common formative assessment and what does that mean to you? So if you could chat that in the chat area, we're going to take a look at that so we can get that discussion going, just to get everybody thinking. What is common formative assessment and what is your definition of that? All right, so we have some answers coming in. I see a quiz given to check for knowledge. I see learning checks, which is awesome. They're used to check on progress, used by all staff in a grade or course. Awesome. Quizzes or such that are used to gauge where students are at the moment. That's very nice. I'll give you a few more seconds to get those in. Used to drive instruction. Awesome. Timely feedback. I think of it as a learning check, so to speak. Assessments given throughout instruction to assess learning. All right. So I see a wide variety of those. Let me just go ahead and stop. And I'm going to put the chat boxes down at the bottom of your screen. If you need to chat those in, I'm going to go ahead and move forward because I do see we have a lot of engagement here. And I want to be able to share those with you guys. All right, so we're going to move on. Thank you all for your responses. We see a lot of knowledge checks, a shared assessment given to all students to check their knowledge. So I'm going to go ahead and jump us into, or I'm sorry, I'm going to let Jocelyn jump us into the definition of common formative assessment that we'll be working through.
Okay, so we kind of discussed it. Common formative assessments are team-designed intentional measures used for the purpose of monitoring student attainment of essential learning targets throughout the instructional process. That's a really long sentence. We believe, or we work from the assumption that common formative assessments are designed to gauge student performance in 3 areas. So the first area here is content area. That's just to what level can my students master the content provided in the test. Common formative assessments can also judge or gauge timing, how much time these students are taking on their assessments, and they can also judge use of, or sorry, not judge use of the results, but they're designed so that you can use the results to make data-driven instructional decisions. So with all of that said, let's talk about some common characteristics of common formative assessments. So common formative assessments are collaboratively developed by a team of educators. That means that everybody in the creation all the way downward is on the same page. It's used as a measure and results impact instruction. That means that it is a formative assessment, that you are using it to make further decisions about your instruction. They are administered by all content level teachers. That means, if you've got a 7th grade math teaching team, everybody is taking the same assessment. They're administered around the same time. That doesn't mean that you're all in at 10:30 on a Monday taking this test, but it does mean that we are all working on this within the same sort of instructional period. And the items need to be exactly the same. We don't want any margin of error on the items. We want to know that we're testing the exact same skills. So I'm going to toss it back over to Crystal. We're going to talk a little bit about why you would want to use common assessment.
All right, thank you, Jocelyn. So let's talk about why you would want to use common assessments. So Jocelyn did a really nice job defining and providing the characteristics, but when we talk about why you would want to use common assessments, there are many reasons. I'll provide 3 for the sake of time today, and that first reason is, number 1, common assessments cover what you have taught or plan to teach very soon. So with that being said, it makes more sense or it makes it very important that all teachers are involved in creating the common assessment, choosing the question types for the common assessment, because you all are going to be teaching on it. And at the center of that, of the assessment, is the students. You are wanting to know what your students know or what they, do not know. And so it makes sense for you to create a common assessment that is team developed, because it makes it very efficient when creating and distributing the test. It also, when you think about the students, they are all being graded on or expected to know the same content. So in their grade level content area, they're all expected to know pretty much the same thing. Common assessment in many cases is your tier 1 intervention. So differentiation isn't needed at that point. So it just makes sense as a teacher for you to, or as a group, for you to provide a common assessment and work on that common assessment together. Another reason you may would want to use a common assessment is because they are more equitable for students. As a team-developed common assessment, they're more equitable to students. When you think about creating the assessment, you want the questions to have a variety of thought behind them. And you want to make sure that all of your students are getting the same level of knowledge, depth of knowledge, rigor, same curriculum, the same essential knowledge and skills. You can do that in a team common assessment or team developed common assessment, because you have all those different backgrounds coming in and contributing to this common assessment. And then the last reason I would provide for why you should use a team-developed common assessment is that it creates this sort of systematic intervention at the tier 1 level. So all teachers just have a greater understanding of the curriculum and what's expected for the students. And that promotes fairness across the board. And it also just allows for your teachers, or all teachers, to be on the same page, so that if you need to improve any of your instructional practices, you can do so maybe from one class to another, but also collaborate on those instructional practices. So that's just some of the reasons why you would want to use common assessments, specifically team-developed common assessments. So we have another poll question, and it's going to launch us into our barriers. And that question is, what barriers does your school face when implementing common assessments? So I'm going to let Alexis start that.
All right, I just launched that, so go ahead and get your answers in. All right, we almost have 50% voting, so we'll give you a few more seconds. All right, and I'm going to close that in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right.
Awesome. So looking at the results, we have writing standards aligned questions can be a barrier, sharing it across teams, providing students with accommodations. We really have a wide variety, and we're going to talk through each of these today. So go ahead and sit back because we're going to go ahead and jump into those barriers. And again, it is a lot of what you saw in the poll. So writing standards-aligned questions can take time, sharing the assessment across teams, providing student accommodations, grading the assessment, and analyzing results. So let's go ahead and talk about how you can overcome some of these barriers with Study Island.
So we are here to talk about Study Island specifically. So Study Island is a formative assessment solution, and it works well with many different formative assessment styles, including our common formative assessment that we're going over today. It is aligned to your state standards, which means that we build it out of your standards, not the other way around. It provides an assessment builder. You get robust real-time data. That means that the data is available to you the second your students finish their assessment. And the product is mobile optimized, which means that any device that can read HTML5, that includes iPhones, Samsung, basically any tablet or mobile phone can access Study Island. So let's talk a little bit about this first barrier. Writing standards aligned question takes time. That is absolutely true, and it's hard and it's weird, and we've done it for you. So when we talk about writing questions, we should also discuss that students need to be familiar with the questions types that they may see on their high stakes state assessments, and Study Island is specifically tailored to that. We have over 600,000 unique questions and 14 different item types. So let's go ahead and pop into the product and take a look. So let's go to that live demo. And I'm gonna scoot this right over here. Okay, so right now I am in as a teacher. So in order to create a built test that my co-teachers could use, I'm going to come over here to Built Test Library on the left-hand side. I'm going to click Build a Test. Now I'm not going to title this anything special, but this is whatever you would want to call your common assessment. Make sure that you title it deliberately because you can use this year after year and you don't want to lose it by calling it something vague. You can also put any additional information to teachers here. Just keep in mind, students have to dig to find it, but they can see whatever you put here. So let's go to next questions. And you'll see here, we have sort of a weird thing going on. We have North Carolina and Texas programs. That's probably not going to happen to you. You will probably see your state programs, U.S. programs, and then custom materials. So if you do want to go ahead and write your own questions, you can do so, especially if it's something that we don't cover necessarily in Study Island. But let's talk about the ones we do cover. Let's come here to Texas programs, and I'm going to come to 3rd grade reading. And then I'm going to come over here to spelling patterns. So let's click this. We'll let this load up. And you'll see we have 2 different question types. We have assessment questions and practice questions. The difference is that assessment questions are unique to Test Builder, and then practice questions may be found in practice and instruction assignments. So let's click assessment questions right here. You'll see I have all different kinds of questions to ask, but let's say I'm just seeing a lot of multiple choice and I just want close. Let's check this off right here. And it looks like we only have close and practice questions, but that's okay. We can go ahead and add those. Let's say maybe I want just a fill in the blank question. Can go ahead and add those. We also have constructed response questions, and while we're here, I do just want to go ahead and give the disclaimer. Everything else is automatically graded by the program. Constructed response questions do require a teacher to grade them. So let's go ahead and save selections right there. And if we wanted, we could go through here. I could also add a few questions from making predictions. Just go ahead and add that, save selection. And, you know, let's say I wanted to, I don't know how I moved from 3rd to 7th grade, but let's say I wanted some 7th grade reading questions as well. Let's just see what the ceiling of our students is. So I have some questions from 3rd grade. I have some questions from 7th grade. If I wanted, I could even come down here and I could add some questions from physics. It just really allows you to make exactly the test that you need. You'll probably never have a test that you need, both 3rd grade reading and physics, but it'll allow you to do it. So let's go ahead. I'm going to click Save to Library and Exit. If you were creating this just for yourself, you might click Create Assignment Now, but I want to do some more stuff with it. So I'm going to Save to Library and Exit. But before I show you this, I do want to go back and talk about another of our barriers. There we go. Okay, so the next barrier that we are going to talk about is sharing the assessment across teams. Sharing data at any level can be a logistical nightmare. I know even just in the creation of this webinar, getting things back and forth, which is really difficult. And then you educators have to add students and data into the mix, and it just makes it 10 times harder. Luckily, Study Island is really great at sharing. So Study Island allows tests to be shared within the school. That means that if you are on a, let's say you're a teacher, team lead, or a curriculum developer in your school, you can just create a test and then share it out to all of your teachers. Super duper easy. Let's say you want to do something a little bit bigger. Let's say you're over here, you're at school A, and you create a test in your district that's like, oh man, I love that test. Let's share that test out. Your district can then pull that test up into their district account, and they can share it out to school B and school C and basically assign it straight to all of the students if they'd like. They can also straight up create a test. So if you are a district curriculum coordinator or something like that, please feel free to reach out to our support team and they can get you set up with a district account. So let's go back. Let's take a quick look at sharing. And give me 1 second to bring this back over. So let's go back to that built test library. And I know that I created that in 3rd grade. reading. I have that built test demo that I created right here. So I'm going to click this little green circle and you'll see that I can share it right here. So the second I hit share, all of my other teachers are going to be able to see this in the Created by Others tab. Now I'm going to go ahead and click share right now. Oh. And I completely missed the warning that I was going to show you. But the warning that it gave me was that it cannot be altered once it's shared. So in order to protect the integrity of the test, once a test has been shared out, it cannot be altered any further. So make sure that you have the final version of your test before you share it. Now, let's say it's the next year and you want something really close to that test. What you can do is you can come to your original test. You can click Copy Test. It's going to take you straight back to this test builder with all of your original questions selected. You can add more, remove some, and then hit Save to Library and Exit, and you'll have a copy of that test available. Now you can also immediately assign your test or preview it from here, just while we're here. All right, so once it's assigned, the only thing left is for students to go ahead and take it. Which brings us to our next difficulty. So student accommodations are fantastic, and it really warms my heart on a very genuine level that students are getting the accommodations that we need. But realistically, I know that that kind of spreads some resources pretty thin. We want to help, so we've covered a couple of common ones. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to log in as my demo student, Devin. And slide this right over. Okay, so Devin is a student in the middle of a test here. So let's go ahead and click continue on this test, and his session has expired, so we're going to log him back in. Okay. So Devin has this test here, but Devin has a 504 plan or an IEP saying that he needs tests read aloud to him. So what we can do for Devin is we've already enabled it on the teacher end that Devin can have tests read aloud to him through Study Island. So Devin can have some headphones and he can highlight his text and hit play right here. And you guys can't hear this. Crystal is actually the only person on this webinar who can hear what just happened. But as this was being highlighted, it was being read aloud in a lovely lady's robot voice. So you can feel free to go in and mess around and listen to that voice yourselves, of course. What we can also do, sorry, I'm just highlighting things now. What we can also do for Devin is we can make this text a lot bigger if he has any vision difficulties or anything like that. So those are just some really common accommodations that we have covered here. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. Now that we've kind of covered making and taking the test, I'm going to give it back to Crystal to talk about the data.
All right. Well, thank you, Jocelyn. So that covered 3 of the 5 barriers. So again, I am talking about grading the assessment, and I'm actually going to lump together grading the assessment and analyzing the results together, because the first piece, grading the assessment, is super easy in Study Island. As Jocelyn mentioned, the assessment, once the students turn it in, it is graded for the students, except for those constructed response questions. So any of those constructed response questions do require a teacher to grade. However, it's very easy to do. But let's go ahead and look at what those results would look like after the students turned in the assessment. So I'm going to log in. And I am actually going to go to my class manager, because when you assign the assessment, when you assign the assessment to your students, it does go on your class manager. So I'm going to click into my class, and choose my class, and here is a fall common assessment that I made previously. I can very easily look at the results by clicking this Built Test Results icon here. It'll open up a new tab, and as you can see here, it gives me a really nice report. So in this report, I can see my students. I can see when they turned in the assessment or completed the assessment. I can also see the topics and the standards that were covered, and I can always click into the standard to see exactly what that standard was and the number of questions. So I see by topic how students performed on those questions. I have some constructed and response that have already been graded here. I have my prefix and suffix and syllabication. Now, you'll see that this report delineates turned in as complete from not started, and if I had any in progress, I would also get that option right here in the middle that shows which students have not started. So you can always come to this report to see who still needs to take the test. When looking at results, you can go student by student or for the class as you can see here. And if you click into any of that blue hypertext, I like to always just click on the total percentage over here. You can see by student how the student performed. So I can see the questions that the student missed. I can also see, so these are all the ones he missed. I can also see the ones she got correct. So she only got one correct. And then I can view all of the questions. So I can look individually at my results by class. But I can also do this for my students, and I'll show you in just a minute how. One thing I want to point out over here is this unsubmit button. So I don't recommend for a common assessment always unsubmitting, but if there's that extreme circumstance when a student has turned it in on accident, you can always come here and unsubmit the test, which will give them the test back. So that feature does live there. Going back to my results, sometimes, as we talked about earlier, analyzing the results as a group can be a barrier. So if you needed to get these results to if you needed to bring these results to a PLC meeting, you could always open this document as an Excel document, or you can print it out in PDF. And if you assign it from the school admin level to all classes, you can also pull the report by class, and that will be over in the school reports area. So what you could do is, again, open it in Excel, open it as a PDF and print, bring that to the PLC meeting, or you can assign from the school admin level and see all classes. The other reports we give you to look at the whole class or the results for the whole class is this item analysis report. And again, it'll go question by question. It'll show you the number of questions correct, incorrect, the score on those questions, as well as the topic and the standards or expectations or objectives. If I click on any of these questions, this is a good one here. I can see, again, the expectation or the standard. I can see the question. This was a fill in the blank. I'm sorry, this was a multiple choice. And then I can see the student who got it correct or incorrect. Now, if I wanted to see the student's answer, I could always click on the student and it will show me the answer the student chose. So that is another way to look at the results. Now, I mentioned going to school reports to look at the report as well. If I click on school reports here, right here in the middle, I have that built test report, which is the report you would use for any built test, but specifically we're talking about common formative assessment. And you'll see if you click on this built test report that you're given school built test and a school built test comparison report. So say, for instance, you assign multiple common assessments, more than one. You could choose a class and then compare, as you see here, I just have 3, but you can compare those assessments to each other. So you can look from one assessment to another. These are not all the same tests, but I will show you what it looks like. You'll see test over test how your students perform. And again, this isn't the same test, but I can see how the students did on each test there. All right, so I'm going to jump back into the presentation.
Before you move on, Crystal, we have a question, and I think it'd be good to address now while you're in Study Island. But Julie was asking about the student accommodations, and she was wondering how, or if every student has that option, or if there's a way to turn it on for each student.
I'd be happy to answer that. So yes, there is a way for you to turn it on, and I can show you very quickly. You can click on this teacher page here and then go to student settings. It is under the read aloud setting here. You would choose the name of the class, and then if you look here, you'll be able to see the student and who you want to turn that accommodation for, turn on the read aloud accommodation for. You can do it for all math students if you want, or if you want to do it individually by subject, you can. You're given a few options there, but there is, some flexibility in that. You can always turn it off for certain subjects if needed. All right, does that answer your question?
Yes, we're good to go. Thanks, Crystal.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to jump us back into the presentation because we pretty much covered all the barriers and how you can remove them with Study Island. So let's recap. So to summarize what we've covered today, common formative assessments are measures that allow you to gain insight on how your students are performing or would perform on concepts that you've taught or plan to teach. They are administered to all students by all teachers in a content area and most powerful when they're designed collaboratively with all educators. There are, of course, barriers to using common assessments, like the time they take to create, distribute, access, and grade, but those barriers can easily, and as you see, within an hour, given that the students take it, but within an hour, as I've shown you today, can be removed by using the Study Island built test feature. With these barriers removed, you can have data-rich points to inform and impact instruction and continue having, so that you can continue having meaningful interaction with your students that maximize their achievement on what they're expected to know. So we've come to the last portion pretty much of our presentation. Do we have any additional questions that wasn't asked during the webinar?
It doesn't look like we have anything that hasn't been answered individually.
Okay, awesome. Well, if you do have them, keep them coming. I know it takes a minute to kind of chat that in, but we're going to go ahead and move forward because we have another question that we want to pose to you guys. And then I'm going to go ahead and get that going. So the question is, and you can chat this in, is what Study Island topics would you be interested in hearing in the future? Just chat those in for me. And I think we also have some options you can choose from. So you can also either chat that in or you can select one of those options that we have on the screen. Oh, it looks like we're not able to launch that poll, so go ahead and chat those in if you have them. I can give you some options. In the moment, formative assessment is a good option, or an option for you that would have been on that poll. State test preparation, Study Island overview or demo, Study Island in a competency-based classroom, and data-driven instruction are some of the options that would have been on that poll.
All right, so I'm seeing a lot of stuff about test prep. and I am very excited to tell you that we are planning to do several test prep webinars here in the future. I do not have that date in front of me at this moment. I think Alexis is pulling it up for me now. Terry Hatchell, for those of you who said a Study Island overview, we have actually lots of getting started webinars available. We also have them available on YouTube. If you can't make our general time, we do run these webinars independently through Zoom. So it is a different product, but I will chat out our link to our webinar sign up. Oh, so we are going to go over that at the end. Thank you.
All right, and to wrap things up, we did go ahead and pick the winner for this giveaway, and that is Pamela Warren. So Pamela, if you would go ahead and chat over the best email to reach you at, we'll contact you after this webinar. All right, and to wrap things up, we wanted to share some resources with y'all. All of the resources on the left are always available to you if you have Study Island, and then the ones on the right are kind of what Jocelyn was talking about, the workshops. I will go ahead and send y'all some of those links really quick. Just give me a minute, and then I will send it through chat. All right, and let me get the second one. That first one was for the differentiated instruction. All right, and then there's that second one. That's for the test prep for high-stake assessments. And then finally, I do have a favor to ask of y'all. I am about to send out a survey link, and it'll take you about 5 minutes to do. This is how you'll get your certificate of completion for this webinar, and then we always really appreciate the feedback if you have it. So if you wouldn't mind taking the time to fill that out, we would really appreciate it. And I'm about to send that link. All right, so that should be in the chat for everybody. But if you don't have any more questions, I believe that's the end. Let me just check in with Crystal and Jocelyn. They say we're good to go. All right. We will be on for just a few more minutes, just in case there are last-minute questions.
Julie McLaren, do you mind submitting your email address through the chat and I can email you? Thank you, Julie.
So we will be sending out a recording of this in a couple of days, usually either tomorrow or the following day. We'll send that in an email, so you'll have access to it.
Okay, I see your question. Your certificate comes from completing the survey. Yes. And to answer your question, Ms. Starnes, let me see. You can't find the link to the certificate? Is that what you were asking? Your certificate will come when you, your certificate will come after you complete the survey, and then the certificate survey link. If you're not seeing it, Ms. Starnes, if you can chat in your email, I'll just send the link straight to you.
And just as a reminder, we did put all of those links in the chat area. All right, get those last-minute questions in. We'll only be here for a couple more minutes.
Monica, I am seeing your question. Is there a way to print individual graphs with test results for teachers? So you can print the built test report for teachers. If you want a graph, you will have to, I don't believe there's graphs within the built test report, so you would have to create that graph, but you can do that using Excel if you're familiar with Excel. Does that answer that? Okay, Monica, I see your question about printing. If you're looking to print them all at once, so if that's what you're looking for, then you would, there isn't currently a way to print all of the teacher results individually for each teacher. We would have to put that in our feature request area, which is CHive. We can also take that to our product team on our end internally because we are always looking for ways to improve on the product and make it better.
Twyla, for your survey, you should be able to, as soon as you complete it, it's about 5 questions, and you select the webinar down at the bottom that you attended. Right after you're done with that, you'll be taken to a page, and there'll be a link right there for your certificate of attendance. And you just click on that link, and it'll generate automatically on your screen. You'll be able to print it out or save it. And it'll have the date and the name of the webinar. Oh, perfect.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up. If you have any other questions, I just chatted out the implementation specialist email. Feel free to submit your questions to that email. I've gotten everyone's email that has had a question about any individual items like RTI or anything like that. I've gotten your email down, but feel free if you have any other questions that come up to use the implementation specialist at Edmentum email, and it'll get to us so we can assist you further. So we're going to go ahead and close today's workshop. Again, thank you for joining and thank you for all your questions. Have a great day.